till the time they set it up, I just wanted to know what kind of a makeup of the teams that or of the people that we are here is. Are you students? Are you startups? I wanted to know a little bit more. We'll keep this interactive. We understand, there are some, when it's Ankur Variku versus some Gyan, so usually Ankur Variku wins. So we wanted to know what the makeup of this audience is. Generally, what is your makeup? Hello?
I'm actually part of an IT company.
Okay.
We are into business, IT business for the last 7 years.
Okay. What company is it?
It's InfoTouch technology.
Okay. So you've been seeing a lot of AI coming into different spaces.
AI.
Okay. How about you at the back? कहाँ से हो आप?
We are from Cyber Software Solutions.
Cyber. So from Puneet's company. Okay. Good. आप भी?
No, I am from Masterplus. I am AVP there. Looking after marketing. We are into.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. So are we waiting or start?
Yes, we can start.
Huh?
People are starting.
Okay. So I think with AI, we've been seeing that, AI is kind of everywhere. And ये हटवा दीजिए please. I think we can keep this interactive actually. How many of you feel that this wave of AI is going to be like a completely, like it will come and go away, and how many of you think it's going to be like a long lasting wave which is going to change the way we work? So for the first one, how many of you think this is going to be like a wave that comes and goes? Aajao Vikram. How many of you think this AI wave is there to stay? Show of hands. It's there to stay? And how many of you think it's going to come and go away?
I think it will change with time. Not too sure.
Okay, so it will change the way we work, definitely, right? And then, what is the exposure level generally? Are you exposed to of course, everybody's used ChatGPT, but then any programmatic access that you have to AI? Programmatic access.
We are doing data analysis through this.
So are you programmatically doing that, or are you like putting that into a Excel sheet and putting that as a data analysis in the ChatGPT and then letting it to?
We are doing this programmatically, but we are in initial stages right now.
Right. So, I mean, in master trust language, there's a lot of scope for generative AI, where it analyzes what's happening in the space and gives you input. Now, what we are going to be talking about, or what I generally like to talk about, is what happens when you apply a model, put a client's data into the model, and then the model starts to use that data, take that data forward, or do whatever it needs to do with the data, right? So
basically it segregates the data between investors and traders. उनका working style क्या है उसके हिसाब से it segregates.
And do you do that for yourself, or do you do it for third parties?
No, for ourselves.
For yourselves. Okay. What if the model misbehaves and does something wrong, and then you make a wrong decision based upon that? Okay. So, as the, एक शेर है गालिब का which says, जाहिद शराब पीने दे मस्जिद में बैठकर या ऐसी जगह बता जहाँ खुदा ना हो. We are reaching a stage where everything that we do in life is going to have AI there, right? या ऐसी जगह बता जहाँ खुदा ना हो will become या ऐसी जगह बता जहाँ AI ना हो. So our interactions in daily life with AI will become only next to, I mean, everything we are starting to see, right? Now, when that starts happening, there's a big legal implication that starts happening. One, you've got to be leveraging AI to remain competitive. Second, if you leverage AI, you have to do it the right way, right? So the challenge becomes, how do you do that legally and save yourself and save your clients' data sets, etc., which are very valuable, of course, at Jewelry. So I thought this will be a good opportunity for us to talk about use or practical use of AI, what happens when, what are the different models where you use AI, etc., etc. So, this is more like a gyan, take it as shape of things to come from somebody who's leveraged AI, also seen how this can go wrong, also seen how this can go right, and also seen how it scales and how you use it with customers, right? So I'm going to make it short, but I'm going to make it really, I would want to make it as interactive as possible, and bring in more of the master in the class than the class in the master. For example, I will want you to kind of intervene and interject if you need to, and talk about it, right? So, देखो, AI is something that people like talk about, but don't really too many people understand as much, right? In the last 5 years, I've kind of worked a lot on AI side of it, legal sides of it, and legal AI sides of it, right? So let's first talk about the various models, right? Now, when it comes to generative AI, most people access generative AI right now through ChatGPT, right? या फिर कोई instruct models हैं जो Hugging Face पे पड़े हुए हैं. Whereas what actually how you access AI is generative AIs, either you can go on a platform access, which is essentially what the next level of what you were mentioning about is. The next level of what you were mentioning about is that you start using it for your customers. You provide a web-based access and start using it for your customers, where they log into your site and they start using it. If you're not doing it, some of your competitors are working on that, right? That, okay, why should I have to talk to a person? I should be able to. So how do you do that? You have access platforms for that: Azure, OpenAI, AWS, Google, IBM, right? Then you have the second one, which is the most common one, the web-based access. कोई problem नहीं है, जाओ online जाओ, अपना data उनको दो, वो आपका data को use करेंगे और free में उसको use करो, और when it's free, you are the product. The third is in API based via third-party server, or you do. This typically happens when a closed source service provider of like a OpenAI or somebody provides you over closed source some data set, or then you go to a GPU which is like set up by a service provider. Typically, Azure or OpenAI or somebody would give you GPUs जहाँ पर आप अपना मॉडल को ट्रेन करते हो या फाइन ट्यून करते हो और उसको यूज कर सकते हो, right? So there's a finite difference between fine tuning and model replicating. And then of course you have access to libraries. These are Hugging Face libraries, etc. जिसको आप access करके then you can apply onto your own servers and apply models which are most relevant. Now, if you're anywhere in the first generation of application of AI, you are typically using the web-based accesses. And as you move forward, things move forward. So अमूल्य जी, एक शेर आपने मिस कर दिया अब तक.
मुकर्रर सर
हो गया नहीं हो.
ओके.
मस्जिद खुदा का घर है, पीने की जगह नहीं, तू काफिर के दिल में जा, वहाँ खुदा नहीं.
और वो जगह बता दे जहाँ पर खुदा ना हो.
वो हो गया. Anyways, now we go to what are the different models of generative AI? This, I mean, you know, since we are talking in a master class, it's an important part for all of you to understand and make sure that we understand what are the different models of AI. So, एक तो होता है supervised learning model, where you learn from some labeled data. जिसे RLHF कहते हैं, reinforcement learning with human feedback, right? तो उसमें क्या होगा, आपका बहुत सारा डेटा पड़ा होगा ऑफ पीपल हु आर यूजिंग फॉर एग्जाम्पल Amazon, who are buying from Amazon. Some human input has gone in, and then you use an AI that's called a supervised learning model. An unsupervised learning model is where there is unlabeled responses, and the intrinsic patterns are being found from big data. And the third is reinforcement learning models, where you train it for a little bit, give a reward or a penalty, and then it learns from it, right? You tell the model, okay, what you said in terms of an investment decision was right. First one was right, second one was right, third one was right, fourth one was wrong, wrong, and the fifth onwards it starts learning. In future, what might also start happening is you might slap a robot 3 times, 4th time it will slap you back. That would also be a reinforcement learning model. It will also be driven by the same text models that we are training the model on, right? It's called multimodality as we move forward in use of robotics. Or you might have a gym trainer who might tell you that 3 times you picked up 25 kgs, next time you can pick up 27, right? So that's called reinforcement learning mechanism. Thank God it's not coming anytime soon. Now, how do you access? Now, this is where I open this up. Since we are in a master class, I like to open this up, right? Tell me about the most widely used closed source model. Most widely used closed source model. Please, anybody. Most widely used closed source generative AI model. ChatGPT. ChatGPT is based upon a transformer model called GPT, right? So, where the source, why is it called closed source? Because the source code, the training data set, nobody actually knows, because they've picked up from anywhere and just trained it on a large amount of model and tried some inference learning on it and done whatever they had to do, right? So it's called, so the types are based upon nature of access, open source and closed source. Mark my words, the most important updates that have happened since the ChatGPT kind of revolution was the opening up of a lot of open source models. What you can do with open source models is pick them up from like providers like Meta, or providers like Mistral, or providers like there's 100 of them. Gemini has open sourced a model, Google has open sourced a model, and then you train it yourself, put it behind your GPU and train it yourself. So those are like, you can have it on your phone, you can have it for your company, you can use it or leverage it for telling stories, and etc., right? So those are called open source models, where you can modify. What it does is, it's the source code is, or the training data set is known, it's open publicly, and it allows developers to study, modify and distribute the software, right? They're still subject to some regulations which Sneha will handle as we move forward. Now, when it comes to selecting which the model is, this is when it comes to business use. How do you select what you have to use? For example, if you're in a highly sensitive business versus if you're in a business which is not as much customer data centric, how do you choose it? These are some of the questions that you do. How do you select the models? This is first of the things. From a legal perspective, it makes sense also. Does the parent provider use AI model to train the data set? Question mark. Or is your data input used to train the AI model selected? Now, what happened with one of the clients that we used to work with was that they had some highly sensitive designing information for their chips. Right? I'll not like to name the customer because they are a Korean large company developing highly sensitive chips. It was public knowledge, but what happened was they started leveraging the data set. There, some of their engineers accessed ChatGPT to answer a few queries. Now, the ChatGPT web interface provides for legally using your data and training its model, right? So that kind of went out, right? So first of all, question is, does your parent service provider provide AI to train the data set? Second, how your data logs are stored, handled, including your data while use of the model selected. How are your logs? Where are the logs maintained? Whether they are in the US, in Europe, Japan, Korea, in India, etc. Questions. What are the confidentiality considerations? Can you all see this? And what about personal or sensitive data information, wherever it's maintained or not, right? So these are questions that you need to ask. Then the security and data protocol, provided by the AI service provider. These are all questions that on a legal context you need to have in mind. Then the other thing is, how's the model trained? Are there any hallucinations? We've all seen, cases where the AI has hallucinated and provided for false information, which as a service provider who might be implementing AI, you're responsible for. Is if the parent model is violating third-party copyright, who will indemnify your customer or user? So very key input, that if your third-party service provider is violating some third-party data. For example, if you're providing your inputs in terms of your services to a large corporate, then and you're violating your model is violating some copyright, who's liable for it? Of course, it's you who's liable, unless they hold you harmless. Is the modification of the model possible by you? How does that change the liability clause? For example, they provided certain things, but you modified it. You bought a car from the market, you modified the car, it was open source or closed source, you modified the car. Who's responsible for that? Whether you're responsible or the manufacturer is responsible once your modification is done. Who does the output belong to? This is a very big thing. Sometimes these days music is being created using AI. Inventions are being done using AI. Creativity is being done. Pictures are being made. Who does it belong to? Does it belong to the model provider, or does it belong to some prose or poetry is created by AI? Who does it belong to? That question needs to be seen. It's a question of which is inherent in the license, and then of course some end user providing. Then you also need to look at like laws where you are providing for. For example, in European law, White House law, or India law. India has a lot of frameworks within which you have to provide your AI protections. For example, data protection laws, privacy laws, legal frameworks for IT, contractual frameworks, and so on. European law is the first European law around AI which has come in. Healthcare has specific laws that you need to be really, really careful about. If you're handling personal data or personally identifiable data of a third party, then specific laws come in. Specific to AI, there is a White House guidance which has come in, and more guidance is starting to come. So, once you select, what you're doing is making sure that you're selecting the right AI model, which is selected based upon the nature of terms, licenses, and also taking into account the contracts as you move forward. So these are some questions that you need to ask. This is a slide I think that can be made available to everybody, but these are questions that you need to ask while taking the right or choosing the right license. Is it free or paid? It's commercial, non-commercial, modifications allowed or not, kind of restrictions are placed, royalties payable, etc., etc. So all this needs to be taken into account when you are taking. Any questions till now? Okay. Now, the most important aspect right now that I want to address is the use of OpenAI. A lot of businesses that we work with are typically using OpenAI models for on API for using any experience here of using or leveraging an OpenAI model for over API. Okay. Anyways, so this is generally the terms applicable to by OpenAI. This is a very important part. License is granted subject to compliance of applicable law, sharing and publication policy, and they don't allow for modification or copying or distribution of any attempted services or automatically programming the AI. So this is generally the closed source. You have to look at the fine print when you're adapting to it. Make sure when you're providing it to a third party or a customer, these compliances are part of your terms and conditions. As AI startups scale, these issues are going to be very, very important. We're starting to see big contracts being signed, billions of dollars of contracts. All of them have the first principle around AI use or abuse or ownership as the key clause, key clause for that. So with that, I'll get Sneha to talk about the next phases. Any questions so far? Please address them. Yeah.
I have question regarding the licenses actually. Take the example of Facebook. They have given lots of open source models recently. Starting means initially they were with MIT license, which means we can use it for commercially. But now they have started means on the same those models and those Gits, they have started those licenses in which they are saying it's now non-commercial. It is for only for research purposes. So what should we consider, that before license or after license, because both of them are providing that Git presently. So
no, that Git are you getting it from Hugging Face?
Yeah, it was firstly initially it was at Hugging Face, that model, and then when I opened that their Git repository, just it took only a week that they have from commercial they have converted into non-commercial license.
No, so you're talking of Llama.
Not Llama. I am, to be particular, I am talking about Audiocraft okay. By Facebook.
So the generative AI models, so it happens, right? Sometimes what they do is they put a base model on there, and then whatever modification happens, there is a commercial aspect to it. Now, if it's open source, it doesn't mean automatically you can pick up and start using it for commercial purposes. So you have to look at and respect the terms of the license. For your experimentation purpose, for small little bits and pieces, you can still use some things. But when you are providing it something to a customer, then you need to be very careful. Or you're providing at a large company site or something. That's when they can come. You have to be careful about. Typically, the license mentions very clearly. You can also go to Hugging Face and see the definition of each of these licenses. I'd really congratulate. It's very heartening to see that question. Please, feel free to reach out to us. We'll help you. This is a maze. It takes time to understand. So Sneha is addressing these aspects. So this is a great question. How big is your application that you're in?
Actually, it's only in development phase only. It is in initial phases
Great.
only. That's why.
That's good. You're looking into the license. It's great you're looking into the license. It's great you're looking into the different aspects of it. You can also put up a model, fine tune it, and put it separately, and say sometimes if it's allowed, you can put a premium on it also. You can yourself pick up a Llama, fine tune it a little bit, and say, okay, this is also under an MIT license, because the add-on is still your intellectual property.
Okay.
Great question.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll invite Sneha to take the rest of the. Thanks.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. We'll not break the momentum that was set by Mr. Talwar and dive straight away into how will you ever use AI in a business. One is you will use it for a business, and the other is you will use it as a business. For a business means you make your life easy, you use it for operational level, menial tasks, trying to basically optimize, schedule, operationalize your entire working. Strategic level, where you are looking at forecasting by using AI technologies. Functional level, when you're basically relying upon AI for analytics. And on a product service level, which is essentially for AI being used as a business, where you yourself have created technology which you are leveraging as a business to other end users. So now we go on to how AI is used as a business. What are the things that we need to take care of as a business? A business must ensure various things when they are using AI as a business, and it's been amply clear by now, it's been established. AI is something that we cannot escape. Even if AI is not a service that we provide, it is going to be a service or a product as an entrepreneur that we will have to use to provide better services and product in turn. So the first thing is we should understand what is the purpose of using the AI, because here we are using AI for our business. So you understand your purpose, and then you understand what model are you going to choose based on your purpose. Is it for content creation? Is it going to be used for commercial? Is the end user going to have to pay for it, which means that your liabilities would have to be addressed accordingly. You will also need to know when you're selecting your model as to how your AI that you're selecting is training the data. Where is it collecting? Where is it scrolling over? So suppose you have a content site like a chat GPT, for example, and your data is being collected from all over the place. And what you get as an end result is probably a copyrighted piece from some third party. When you give that to the end user and the end user publishes it, then that becomes a clear case of copyright infringement. So which is why we have to be careful of these things when we are selecting AI. How it's being trained, can you make modifications? What are your rights on the modifications that you're making? Will you have to give it to the public for free? Do you have right to keep it closed source? All of that. And you also have to be very, very mindful of the safeguards. Safeguards are not just by looking at the terms that you are, the open source or the closed source license that you are picking, not just those terms. Your own terms for the end users are very, very important. Your privacy policy becomes very important, and your physical IT infrastructure becomes important, like firewalling. All of these things become key when you're using AI for business. Then do you have the necessary licenses to use the IP? Are you going to make your own IP that you create out of it, if at all? Are you going to give those as a limited license to your end users? How would those terms play out is also very essential. And finally, now the elephant in the room has become the privacy laws. Very recently, we have become in line with the GDPR policy of the Europe, and we have adopted them in India, and they are a landmine. For penalty up to 3 crores is the minimum penalty for violation thereof. So we have to, when you're looking at infrastructure. Now, we've already spoken a lot about open and closed source in language, but we are just going to get a little bit into it. What is open source? It's a misnomer, so to say. It may look like it's open and free for all, but it comes with its own caveat. Now, any code that you've created is understandably copyright subject matter, if nothing else. As a coder, under open source, you have basically contributed to the society and given to them that, all right, I've made this code, it's an AI model, you go ahead and use it. But you have put certain conditions that when you use it, you give me attribution, when you make modifications to it, you give it back to the society, and so on and so forth. What happens when you are modifying that code? What happens to your copyright aspect of it? So it's legally very tricky. Open source need not always be free. It may be attached with a certain fee for important functionalities. So the question that you asked, basically, when you moved from one version to another, what is pertinent to be looked into, was there any change in the version? If there was an added functionality, then with that added functionality, there could have been changed terms or modified terms. Because otherwise, ideally, what you start with, if there is no change in the product, those are the terms that shall stay. So that's the basic of contract law. Now, for open source, the risk is that because everything is so open, you're training your data on probably everything and anything, there are concerns when it comes to copyright, there are concerns when it comes to privacy. On the flip side, there is closed source license, which is, as the name suggests, it is not publicly accessible. You cannot make many modifications. There can be exceptions here and there where they allow you modifications subject to terms and conditions. And it's basically a black box architecture. You do not know how they are training the data, but it's certainly secure. So which is why when you're planning to make a commercially viable product, your end product is based on an AI, you're charging other people money, and you want to ensure security, you go for something like a closed source license or a tightly woven open source. Now, we'll quickly go through this. I just want... Yeah, so open source can also be of various types. There could be a permissive license, which is broader, wherein you can make the modifications, but you have to give it out as contribution. And you can also make it proprietary. So basically, you have taken a code from an open source license, you make modifications to it. To the extent of that modification, you can keep that proprietary. You can have your closed source to that extent. And copyleft is stringent. It says you are taking an open source license. Even if you make a modification, you are going to maintain it as open source, and it's going to be all out in the open. And public domain license is free for all, which means a lot of risks also come with it. There are various ways how you would choose to select these licenses. I'm just leaving this. We'll share the slide after the presentation, and we'll dig into the legal issues directly. Similarly, closed source licenses can also be categorized, and this is not to say that these can be boxed separately. It's a very fluid and interchangeable relation. Like a commercial license could also be a proprietary license. It's not necessarily mutually exclusive. So a commercial license is, as the name suggests, your end game is to be using it commercially. Non-commercial, like you had mentioned, a lot of times there are bars that you cannot use it for a certain industry, or you cannot use it for commercial activity at all. So those will be non-commercial licenses, and proprietary licenses is what we were talking about when we spoke of special contracts, where there has to be a drafting of a separate agreement, and it's on the terms of the maker, essentially, that the contracts are negotiated. Now, I'll just take you quickly through the typical terms that you will see in different kinds of licenses, and that you should probably be mindful of. For Llama 2 by Meta, they'll give you a royalty-free limited license. Limited license means there'll be conditions involved, and the AI's IP will be with Meta, and you will, however, have right to create derivative works. Means you'll have right to make modifications. And if you're distributing, this is important when you're using Llama to create your own service or product. If you're distributing or making it available to your end user, the terms of Llama shall have to be signed by the end user, meaning thereby it will have to be a part of your policy and terms of use. You have to ensure that what Meta makes you sign, you make your end user sign. And suppose you are having, you will not, so they are very clear, you will not use it to improve your own LLM model or large language model. That's a bar, a restriction. And there can also sometimes be restriction on the number of users. So if suppose there are say 1,000 or 10,000 user mark, and for that, you may have to take a separate license. I see there is paucity of time. I'll just take it quickly. And the output would be without any warranty, which means a mistake in the output is not going to be Meta's liability. And any other modifications that you make for them that are derivative work that you have produced out of this, you will be the owner to that extent. Similarly, Mistral also has certain terms where they say that the prompt that you give, the input to the AI is your IP, and output ownership is your IP, but it's not your liability, and it's not Mistral's liability. They will not indemnify you for a mistake that happens in the output. It is very, very important for something that's sensitive like health related industry. This is a very key term. This was a chart that I don't think we have time to go through, but it was basically how you can select the kind of license based on the terms. What is it that you want as the end goal? This is something that we've already addressed in Mr. Talwar's session. Now, when you're using AI as a business, then you have certain separate considerations. In addition to the considerations that we've already spoken of, like you have to take care of the license terms with users, license term with third-party providers, internal policies, you have to also look at another aspect, securing your own IP, because now you have created an AI. So how do you secure an IP in AI-related developments, inventions, or works? So when your tech is an invention, it can be protected under patents. When it is, when your code can be protected as a literary work, you go for copyright. And when it's proprietary, you want to keep it confidential. You don't want to go for either of the two. You can keep it as trade secrets. Now, in protecting the tech and entering into the patent protection, there are two things that we look at. When your invention itself is when your invention itself is an AI, and when your invention has been made by an AI. So patentability of AI-related invention is not an issue, although there is a huge human cry about the fact that India does not allow computer program invention. That's not true. There is a requirement of a technical contribution, and the guidelines have been very clear, the judgments have been very clear, that there has to be an integration with the hardware of the software so as to produce a machine transformation effect. If that is there, if your AI software can be tied to a hardware, you have a patentable subject matter. And the myth of a computer program not being patentable is broken by the statistics itself. 50% of AI filings between 2015 to 2021 was centered around AI-related invention. Now, this is when invention is an AI. What happens when invention is created by an AI? That's where the tricky part lies, because it's a machine, it's a bot, it's a code that has created an invention. So according to law, patent can be filed by any person claiming to be first and true inventor. Patentee is also a person who has been allowed to register as a grantee. Now, who is a person? Person is human or a legal entity, which means a company, an individual, an MSME, startup, all of those can qualify as a person, but AI, a machine, cannot be an inventor. That's the stand as on date. And while it is heartening to see what the standing committee has noted, that this requirement of human being an inventor can really hinder the technology development in AI space by AI, it's heartening, but the way things are going across the globe, this is the position everywhere. Now we'll move to the copyright and trade secret aspect of protection. Thank you for your time.
I won't take much of time because I think we've extended the session. So just give me 5 minutes. I just want to give some interesting facts about copyright and trade secret and how AI it gets involved in it. So just getting you some facts in between. So first question that actually comes when we talk about copyright protection is if a code is there, if a software code is there, definitely you have a copyright protection. But what happens when a code is generated by an AI? Who is the owner and who is an author? Is the question that needs to be determined when I file for a copyright registration. So that is something, so we don't have a legislation to that effect. However, there are some recognitions by the courts during these years and development that has come into play. So I would just like to maybe point out few cases and few developments that the Delhi High Court actually took. So Delhi High Court took a very conservative view in back in 2019 when they did not consider granting AI the authorship to CBSE. And however, there is an interesting fact. Recently in 2020, Copyright Office actually recognized the AI tool Raghav, which actually made the Van Gogh paintings. However, it was withdrawn later and dismissed because law is yet to be evolved in it, and how an author can be an AI with a human person is something to be determined. Would like to bring an interesting one more fact. So recently in February this year, the Ministry of Commerce and Industry clarified. So they said that we have adequate protection for copyright. So they are not going to bring any new act for this. However, they are going to have some amendments in IT Act in place to have recognition to such developments that are happening in this space. So that's about copyright that I wanted to point out. And when we talk about trade secret, one important fact. So what is a trade secret? Very important when we talk about AI and this age, since we know that there are no legislations in place as of now, and enforcement will take time when we come to courts and IP in place. So very important is that we have contracts in place. That's where it's very important that we have contracts when business come into play. The terms need to be defined very clearly. Who is going to have the liability if something wrong or misuse of any software or any code goes? Because when we talk about how recently, so I'm going to talk about how copyright violation deep fakes. One of the very important factors that have come into play these days, and a lot of, like we have seen videos and the celebrities who are there, how their content has been misused. So how that is going to be protected is one of the questions that we need to consider and have protection to. So that's one of the things. And so, of course, when we talk about India as of now, so there is this question and legal fact that needs to be considered. And law is evolving, I feel. The courts are now recognizing how AI can come into play and how the protection can be granted. So that's something we need to. So legal do's and don'ts is something I just pointed out in this slide of what we need to actually consider. So firstly, we need to see when we are getting into contract, what IP protection is granted, what are the obligations that I will have if I'm a business, if I'm a provider of a product or service, or if I'm a receiver. We generally have agreements and data in place where, the terms are not clearly defined that who will be responsible if something goes wrong. So these are the liabilities, and what will happen if a tool is there and infringement is caused? Who will be responsible? So these terms and damages, very important is quantum of damages to be quantified in agreements when we come into play if I'm a user or I'm a receiver of AI. So these are few things that, of course, we'll have the slides available to everybody and you can go through it. I just had to quickly wrap this up. So thank you for your patient listening. Thank you. If there are any questions, we'll be happy to take them.
Any questions? Okay, thank you so much. Yes, so I would like our senior member, Mr. Amul Shukla ji, to be on dais to facilitate Mr. Jitin Talwar and team. So Komal ma'am, on behalf of Jitin sir, can you help me with the... Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am. Yes, Jitin sir. This
It'll happen one by one. We'll invite her.
Amulya sir.
Yeah, this is the first.
Yes, please. Next one.
Amulya sir.
Ji.
Ma'am.
This side. Ma'am.
Ma'am, आप रुकिए.
पकड़ा दीजिए. Next is Sneha Sharma, ma'am.
Congratulations, you spoke very well. It doesn't happen every day. Kudos to you. Jitin, तो हम जानते हैं he is a stalwart, but then you took it forward wonderfully. ये भी है.
Yes, sir.
Miss Pritika Kohli.
These are great opportunities, and we should go a long way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amulya sir. And yes, we'll gather here again after the lunch around 2:45. So we'll be here for next session. Right. Thank you so much. Right. Thank you so much.